PNR with Adam R. Welcome to 3 PNR. I'm your host, Adam R. And on this episode, I have Sydney Sherman. How you doing, Sydney?
Great, and thanks for having me.
Thank you for being on. I appreciate your time. Tonight's topic is focused on the afterlife.
It's my favorite subject.
Perfect. What got you into that subject?
I was actually kind of born into it. My whole family has had a deep connection to the universal path and nature and energy. My grandfather was Penobscot on the reservation, grew up there, and he taught me a lot. And their thinking is more naturalistic and more universal than, of course, what most people normally think. So I grew up understanding that our energies are still here, that we may lose the physical aspect of ourselves, but our energy still remains and we're still part of this universe. So yes, living the dream for 59 years and going.
So you yourself, have you had any kind of near-death experience or anything like that?
Near-death experience? No, I haven't. And I will equate that to either I've been extremely lucky, or I do have the ability, as everybody does, to hear, see, smell, feel my loved ones. And I have had 2 times in my life where my grandmother, wonderful lady, warned me of something that was to come. And so, of course, I avoided the situation, which could have been disastrous. So near death, no, I think because their help, but pretty close.
Huh. So in your opinion, what makes us alive?
Well, I'm also a registered nurse, and I also study thanatology, and I have several degrees in many different topics like biology and things like that. So I studied the sciences quite in depth. It's been well known for a long time that we have 2 components, a physical or physiological self, as well as an energy source, which is where our life force is. People want to call it a soul or whatever words they choose to use. And as my grandfather always said, the physical self can only last so long. It's frail, it's compromised, it gets old, it gets diabetes, cancer, amputation. At some point in time, that ceases to function. And then you're left back with your energy. So like I said, the whole study of life, there's the 2 components, but the one basic component that we all share with our loved ones is the fact that we remain energy. And it's that energy that we've come from and that we go back to.
Oh, it's interesting. I have no official position as far as afterlife or religion, anything like that, because I haven't experienced enough. So part of what I'm doing in this podcast is I'm trying to venture out to learn absorb as much information as possible on all things that we consider abnormal. The more I learn about it and the more I interview on or off podcast, it's turning out to be quite normal. So,
it's a shame that, and again, when I do my presentations, I explain to people that there's documentation way, way back. You can go to the 1400s. Go to the local library, support your local library, and, do your own research. But there's many journals written by many normal people, just like you and myself, or even famous people, where they documented daily on the fact, visitations that they had. And it wasn't anything strange. It was like, I went to the ballpark today with my son. We watched the game. It was a great hitter. Mom wore that beautiful pink dress that she knows I like. Okay, well, Mom's dead. But they would just say this in their journals. And for people who, and again, it's not a religious thing. I don't tout religion either. Everybody has their own beliefs. But for people who come up to me and say that, speaking to our loved ones' energies goes against the Bible. There is actually 4 parables in the Bible that talk about visitations, loved ones coming back to either rejoice, celebrate, bring words of wisdom, encouragement, or whatever. And at no point in time in any of those parables did the person scream, "It's a ghost," and run and hide under their blanket.
Right.
The next lines were, it was they exhilarated, or they were jubilated, or they are happy, or whatever else. And you have to look at the way up to about the 1670s, 1730s. People had these interactions all the time, and it wasn't upsetting to them. It wasn't scary to them because it was expected and accepted. It was expected because it happened all the time, and it was accepted because it happened all the time. So somewhere around the mid 1700s, we started getting thoughts put into our heads, and everybody can take their own view on that, on the fact that this is not something we are supposed to do, when in fact it is absolutely something we are supposed to do.
Right. For me, the evolution for religion for me is a strange one. I say this because I'm one of these people who watch a lot of documentaries, or I read a lot of things, and I said this before, but you look at the ancient Greeks and Egyptians and the technologies they were working on, and I often wonder, why did that stop? And it turns out because the Roman Empire took over, and at the helm of that was Christianity, or there you go, that version of it. And they suppressed, in other words, they suppressed the information because it's considered like a form of witchcraft, I guess. We're 2,000 years behind the ball on the technology, or else who knows what we'd have right now. But
well, you hit the nail on the head. And again, this information is everything I talk about when I do my presentations. I tell people everything that I've said, everything's in any of the books that I've written, because I've written 3, is researchable, very well documented. It's not made up. And I even give them the links where they can go and read the stuff for themselves. So you've taken stuff that's very well documented. We can't erase that part of history just because somebody came along, as you said, either a particular religion and or theology, and all of a suddenly tell people that it doesn't happen because they don't like that. So I always tell people, I do like you do. I do a lot of research. I watch a lot of documentaries, and history is amazing. But, sometimes we have to just do our own research, and being able to see my loved ones all my life with the help of my grandfather. And of course, my father was the same way. My children are the same way. It's to me, it's a no brainer. I mean, it's just really a no brainer. And also just so, if you've ever heard of the Dropa, have you ever heard of a Dropa?
No, I'm not familiar with that.
Research, it's a little bit different. It's a tie-in more to aliens, but the Dropa stone. It's a Dropa stone.
I want to write that down. Spell that for me.
Yeah. I believe it's DROPA, the Dropa stone. But there's a huge, and again, I could go on for probably about an hour about, but you'll research it, and hopefully, some of your listeners will too. There's a lot of information in the things that they found with the history of the Dropa and what the Dropa signified to certain groups of people, and places that they found it, and evidence that they've been able to find through either DNA or through forensic studies that actually connect the alien with the human life force, i.e. our aura energy, and right back in a great circle. Again, meaning that we are connected. So if you understand, which I'm sure you do, the law of conservation of energy, that energy cannot be created or destroyed.
Right.
And if we're energy beings, that means our energy has always been here. And that if we're energy beings, that means when we physically die, our energy doesn't die. The universe is the same way. And we are connected to the universe through molecules and atoms and different things that are, they've already proved that. Neil deGrasse Tyson proved that like 15 years ago, and him and his colleagues. But look at the Dropa stone. You might be a little amazed to see the correlation between the aliens, or what we believe to be aliens, and us. And of course, the form we take once we are no longer using our physical self.
It's going to be a long night for me because I go down rabbit holes and I stay up all night when I'm in them. And it's bad too, because I will literally frustrate myself trying to learn as much as possible. I guess that leads to real quick before we get to the next question. This is my position, so people understand it, so you understand it. I think we have a very poor perspective of humanity. I really do. I think if you want a religion, call it humanity. If you want a race, call it human. And if you want a place to call home, call it Earth. These are very obvious things that I think would mend a lot of wounds.
Well, I completely agree with everything that you're saying. Again, when I do my presentations and people say, well, what about heaven? What about this? That's just a name. It's a name that somebody has put on different places that we either occupy, or, places where we find sources of either knowledge or otherwise. So I completely agree with you. There's too much. And let's take the word even paranormal. And then I'm going to tell you something about paranormal in a second. I'm not dissing the paranormal. I actually am very fond of it. But when people get crazy with throwing these words out, paranormal, just as sure as you know, means above the normal, outside the normal. So if I have Rice Krispies every morning for breakfast, which I do, and this morning I decided to have waffles, which I did, that's paranormal.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So people just take, like you said, they take words and they put definitions behind it and stuff, and then they create an effect.
Yeah, by what you just said, breakfast is what you had was parallel to what's normal. That's literally
Right.
where it comes from.
Yes. And the same thing with the word medium. People called me a medium for years, which I detest. But let's break that down. The word medium just comes from the word media, to tell a story, to speak. So, but look what people have done with that.
Yeah.
So you're right. Labels are probably the fall of a lot of societies.
Well, in me speaking to you, excuse me, understand that I'm kind of coming at you with my child mindset, because a lot of everything I'm researching now comes from my childhood curiosity, which I'm trying to satisfy. And then obviously it's a fear, because we all want to know what happens, and the big question I run into a lot, is what happens when we die? We know what happens to the physical body. There's no question to that.
Yeah, and I agree. And the thing is that even with the knowledge that I have, which is not everything, I still believe that obviously when we die, then we'll have all the knowledge in the world, won't we? But I can only take it from what I have witnessed as a child, when my loved ones have passed away, and the position that they take, the knowledge that I have of what we do know of the physiological separation of the human form versus the energy, the fact that we are energy, no different than the energy that comes from the universe, and we know a lot about that. But also as a registered nurse, and I will tell you, I've probably seen, unfortunately, thousands of people die. I mean, like I said, I'm pretty old. I'm pushing the rocking chair here.
Stop it.
And it's cool. And I've worked with a lot of family members to help them understand that. And again, science knows this. I have to sit there by the bedside as a registered nurse. I can pronounce. And I have to wait until the pulse and the respiration have stopped, the clinical signs of life.
Right.
When technically I can tell by looking, the separation has already happened. The person has left the building. Okay.
Right.
And the saddest thing is that in most cases, even though the medulla oblongata, the base of the brain that decides we're going to breathe, has long since stopped, so technically the person's clinically dead, for up to 45 minutes, they can still detect brain wave patterns that are supportive of life. So, again, if people do the research.
It sounds to me like the computer. I call my brain the computer. It sounds to me like the computer's not ready to be done. The body can't go any further, right? The machine's done, but the computer's like, wait, what are we doing? I got more to do.
Now, what they've decided, or they figured out, is the two last parts of the brain that are active is the frontal lobe and the occipital lobe. And they send signals, and that's actually very important for the way the brain works. So the signals are sent back and forth like a ping pong ball until they die. But those are the rationalizing and realizing, and what they call, if you take Reiki or anything like that, the understanding of the universal way, being able to see things in the universal way. And that's how the brain usually sees things. And of course, the back of the brain is for, depth perception, which allows us to have a grander vision of what we could normally see in life. So it would actually make sense to me if when we're dying, if those are the last two parts of the brain that are still firing to prepare us for what we are going to, minus the physical, obviously. So to me, it makes perfect sense, instead of the temporal lobe or the parietal lobe or anything like that. And the pineal gland, the center of the brain, the third eye, is also one of the last things to let off the neurotransmitters. If you look at all those things and you know what they do, you put it all together, it's a perfect piece to be the last thing to hang on to prepare us for where we need to go.
Well, I like that a lot more than some of the things I've been hearing.
I am completely science. They call me the science lady.
No,
science guy.
This is really good. It's good information for me, because I worked in radiology some years ago. And I left the medical field because, well, I was disappointed. I'm going to be honest. I did notice a pattern of where money does kind of dictate outcome based on insurance, based on what your funds are for treatment, et cetera. So I kind of left. It wasn't for me. But there's certain cases with imaging, like what you were discussing about the brain and its functionality thereafter. We definitely could image this. And if we're not doing science to kind of learn more about it, we should be. Or, are we doing like a science per se with maybe an MRI where we're studying someone departing?
Oh, there's tons of studies and tons of films that you can actually watch as the brain slowly starts to stop just before when the body dies. And obviously the physical body dies. In the center of the cortex of the brain, there's a whole bunch of rapid fire like you've never seen before, not even in the normal brain. And it lights up in all these different key areas. And then it slowly subsides and it goes to the frontal lobe and the occipital lobe. And of course, the pineal gland, they can still show that on the imaging as well. They've done these a lot. They have been working on reanimation of the brain to see if they can get those neurosynapses, especially around the cortex of the brain, to reanimate, which is kind of freaky if you think about it.
Yeah, it makes me think.
But I do have to say one thing too. I congratulate you for getting out the medical field. I am making a little shift myself coming up here because unfortunately, and again, like I said, I'm old, so I remember a different way. It is all about money now, and it is about what you have for insurance and what you're going to be allowed to have. And I don't want any part of that.
I'll tell you, my uncle, I spent the better part of my life with watching boxing every single weekend. He passed away from a cancer that another patient in the very hospital I worked at had the same kind, right? Now, my uncle probably he clearly didn't have this man's money, because I'm not going to name the hospital or the person, but the hospital system I worked for, every hospital has a wing named after this gentleman after he'd survived, right? And my uncle perished. And that began that logical part of my head and then the investigative part of my head working. And, when you discover that, you're discouraged. It's done. For me, that ruined the idea of the medical system and being there to help people, because you could put your best efforts out there and you're going to get a negative result. So it wasn't for me.
It is. It's very discouraging. Now, as a nurse, as a clinician, I have to say that Mr. Jones and Mr. Rogers could both have the same type of cancer to the same degree with the same metastasis. And depending on comorbidities or lifestyle or heredity, the one could die and the other one the treatment could work. I mean, there is that.
Yeah, I do make room for that.
However, with that being said, it is absolutely true that the people with the best health care will always get the best health care, and they will always get the experimental. If you notice, follow this along here as we go along with more experimental drugs that are coming out. They will always get the experimental drugs first to be used to make sure that their lives are, saved, if you want to use that philosophy. But it's the people who are not. You don't hear them being offered these same experimental drugs. So you were right on the target. It's a shame. It should not be that way, but so goes the rest of the world, right?
Well, we're controlled by that big corporate thing out there of pharmaceutical, and it's a weird dictation. But at the end of the day, that's why I do these shows. I learn these things for some of us out there, like myself, that are not going to be able to spend a billion. It's that curiosity of the after. So in your study, I'll ask, and I ask this a lot: what is God?
I can only ask you again, my personal opinion of God. I have not seen God. Do I believe in a God or higher power? Absolutely, I do, because that's how I was raised. And even my grandfather would not use the term God, but he believed in a higher power being more universal, not in a physical form, but more of a thought process or a concept. And so, everybody can take what is God, what they think. They can go by the Bible and look at it that way, or they can see it more as a universal thing, as many cultures have. I mean, different cultures have different feelings about what God is. Do I feel that something, maybe it's in my heart, I want to know that something out there is responsible for everything, for the creation of everything. And when you use the human body, and again, that's what I have to go by because that's pretty much what I study.
Right.
It just amazes me that this is not a mismatch. This is not just something that all of a sudden got thrown together, that everything works so perfectly and so orchestrated so well together. My philosophy has there's got to be a higher thinking, a higher power of some kind that put this together, because this is not just a slap it together and see how it works kind of thing. And of course, that also brings you back to that possible Dropa alien thing I'm throwing out there.
That's true. I mean, it's a thing with me. I grew up in a Catholic family as well. And so everything I talk about is not from science. It's from imagination. I have a really wild imagination. And if you couple that with the ability to watch endless documentaries, you start coming to conclusions and your own kind of theories. And also a lot of things I speak about are theory. And as a kid, I would often say, it's like when you look up the stars and the planets, you're amazed, no doubt. So we look to the sky for answers, and I think we project or hope, I guess, want something to be greater out there. And I've done it my whole life, prayed to something. Lately, it's the universe because I've run out of things to pray to. But it's this hope of something out there hearing you, and that it gives you some sense of warmth and like the end of the road's not, for me, it's bad because I'm a nostalgic person. So my biggest issue is I don't want to leave here. I like everything. I like this. I want to remember that, and I'm sure a lot of people are that way. So for me, for the belief system, I'm on unsteady ground. I have no position and I don't doubt anything. That's one thing I can tell you. I am open to learn whatever's out there. But the big questions I keep getting are, so when we pass away, in your opinion, what happens to us after that? Where do we go from there?
Well, we don't go anywhere. We actually stay right here, as my grandfather always said, which I thought was perfect, and I use it now, is one step to the side. So if you want to call it a veil, I mean, it doesn't really look like a veil. There is a little bit of a separation, but they're literally one step to the side. I've never seen them flying up overhead with angel wings or screaming from the fiery pits of hell. But they take their form right next to us. There's no in-service they have to go to, an orientation to check in with their luggage. And there's none of that. And it really is extremely simple. People make the whole process of the separation of the physical self from the energy way too complicated. I mean, way too complicated. It's just not that. So they actually, and when I do my presentations on Zoom or otherwise, picture it this way. Okay, so you're at the end of your life and everything's getting ready to go, south, and your physical body is dying, and the medulla oblongata says you're not going to breathe anymore. The pictures that they always show you, the body raising above itself and looking down, and it can see it laying on the table. That is somewhat true from what I see. It's the rising of this kind of weird looking, kind of like on a hot day coming off of a road, a vapor trail, lifting off the body. And then once it forms itself or takes its shape or completely separates, it literally stands right next to the people who are standing around the bed grieving because you've just died. And it's as simple as that. And are they, people laugh at me when I tell them this, but again, I'm extremely logical. Because I like science, I like fact. What you said before, everything at one time started with a theory, right? Everything started with a theory. And the theory either bore out or it did not. And it's what we know today for science. So as I tell people all the time, we have to underthink this afterlife thing. We'll all find out someday, it's going to be too late. But our loved ones, as they portray it in some areas, they're crawling from the grave, they're screaming, they're moaning from they're trying to avenge their death, trying to find their killer or whatever. And it's very clear in just about every physiological form or update or journal that you read that, all those things are human emotions: anger, resentment, sadness, fear, love, resentment. All those are human emotions. For whatever reason, body chemistry or traits, characteristics, ready. We're not human anymore. So that just does not even make sense that they're going to be screaming from the graves or crying or doing anything like that. We are, because we're still human. So you might find this funny, Adam, but our loved ones are with us everywhere we go. I mean, they're with us everywhere. They don't separate from us. They don't go anywhere. They don't get mad at us. That's a human thing. So when you are using the restroom, they're with you.
It's a good thing because, God, if they were with me all the time, I'm sorry, my bad, but I like that concept. On that note, though,
yeah,
when I say, again, a lot of you'll hear podcasts, but I do a lot of off podcast interviews. People that don't want, they don't want recognition or be, known. And when I interview and I hear about the ghosts and the other negative energies, some of us are coming. I'll even say one of them's an ER doctor, and he told me a story that frightened me. And it only happened to him one time. And it was in a building adjacent to the hospital where he would train, I think other doctors. And he saw something in his peripheral vision, and he asked it why it was in the building after hours. And it wasn't like a shocking movie, frightening moment, but it was enough to scare him. And so when I hear these credible people say these things, what is it they're seeing? What are they seeing?
Well, again, I don't know. I don't know everything. I can just tell you what I've seen. I've never seen an evil, negative energy in my life. In the living, absolutely, but not in the deceased. So I can't tell you what he was seeing. Our brains are wired to all of a sudden think certain ways about certain things. So what he could have seen was called a residual, which I'm sure you heard about that, which is absolutely real. And those things can be pretty scary looking, even though there's no intent to scare there at all. But that's us as humans. That's how we see things. So that could have scared him just because he saw that. And again, I'm not downplaying anything he says. This experience that he had, and this experience that he had. Our eyes do very, very weird things. Being a nurse, again, there's many, many different type of eye disorders that see flashes or sees what they call frames. Frames could be pictures of people or things in the periphery that looks like a human form, and takes on either shape. Then there's the orbs that people get confused with, which has already long time ago been downplayed as nothing. So again, or let's just say he saw somebody who had passed away. And when you do see somebody who passed away, they don't look normal. They're not horrifying, but they definitely don't look normal. So just because they're in a different state that we're not used to seeing, that itself can scare us, even though the intent is not to scare us.
Right. Yeah. There's a guy, there's this study they were doing, it's back in 2006, where you would close your eyes tightly for X amount of time and visualize something for that period. And in a dark room, if you open your eyes up, you could see it before you.
Correct.
Because there's a light our brain makes with this energy that could actually imprint it. This is evident, like let's say you have a neon light you're looking at, and you stare at it for a minute or two and you close your eyes, you can still see it, even the light in itself. Even in your dreams, when you see bright light in your dreams, you're affected by it. So I get what you're saying. I really do. And it's helpful speaking to you because I'm over the course of time, I'm going to be doing a lot of research. I eventually going to go out and do a documentary, but it's tough because there's so much that comes in. I'm refreshed by what you say. I'm going to be honest because it computes to me logically. And I've learned to not doubt anything because I have to make room for whatever like even in the UFO study that I'm doing, some of the people in the podcast. And if you look in 2017, what our military is catching on video, that's undeniable, right? There's no denying that. But that's speaking to a higher technology, whatever it may be. As far as the afterlife, so another big one, and this question comes to me. This is the 5th largest question I receive to ask about is reincarnation.
Oh, you had to pick that one, did you?
I had no choice. I get hit with it. Like when I open the email, that word comes up so often. It's imprinted.
Okay. Here's again, I always tell people what I don't know. I don't know. What I do know, I'd be happy to share with you. Nobody has all the answers, and some of the answers we won't get until it's our time. So with that limitation, I go back to the theory that of our little friend there who said the energy cannot be created or destroyed, the law of conservation of energy.
Right.
So most people who believe in reincarnation, and I'm not discounting it, I think the science is there, goes along with, does it make sense that we have this physical body over this energy source just one time? If our energy has been here since the beginning of time and it always will be, does it make sense that we only get the chance to have the physical body one time? I don't think it does. Have I been reincarnated? I don't know. Would I know? I don't know. I honestly have had some glimpses of things that I should not know. But again, the brain does some very weird, the brain's an awesome thing. It does some very weird things. So my theory is that there is the science to support reincarnation based on that law of conservation of energy or subparts of it. Do I know for sure? No, but I think there's enough science out there to prove that at least there's a possibility.
Yeah, I mean, that's a pleasure thought for me. Because the thought of reincarnating, you don't have a sex when you're in the afterlife. I imagine you're just an energy, or are you still male or female? Those are tough questions.
No, you're actually okay. So you are going. First of all, you're just energy. But just so let me use my grandmother. They were all about validation. I mean, it would be really, really stupid if they just came back as an energy and you, number one, couldn't recognize them or understand who they were. What would be the point? I mean, there's really no point.
Right.
So when my grandmother presents to me, she presents in a facade, and it is just a facade because she doesn't need a physical form anymore, in a physical way, like she looked, especially when she was younger. They do come back looking younger. They're always looking brilliant. Their hair is great. Their teeth are great. I always tell ladies there's no cellulite. It's awesome. But so you can recognize them, and they do things that are recognizable for what their behavior would have been. But again, that is to put on the presentation for you of who they are, so you can differentiate who's with you. But is there a male female to the energy itself? No, there's not.
Huh. Good. Because variety is a good thing.
Well, yeah. I would say
I had a question. I'll just say it to you. You don't have to answer it because it's a bizarre one, but the idea of reincarnating to oneself again at an earlier point in time, or like when you're born to yourself again and you relive life on a different timeline, a different path. And when I heard, the reason I bring that up is some years ago, I read this. This guy said he had lived his life a crazy amount of time. It sounds like Groundhog Day, the movie, but long term. And when I heard that, I was like, that can't be. And he was stating in his previous life, he was a post office worker, then he was this. That sounds like wishful thinking, in my opinion. But I couldn't help but it sparked that little imagination. You know what I mean? It sparked it. And you think in terms of that, if that were the case, life would be endless, right? It would just go on and on and on. Doesn't matter, even if our planet ceased to be, because if according to what he's saying, you're going to go back in that point of time anyway. So the question I ask is, when your loved ones are around you, as you stated earlier, when we depart, obviously we're going to know each other in that energy field or that next level.
Correct.
Awesome.
Yeah, there definitely is a recognition, not necessarily for the physical part. There's a recognition of the energy. And let's face it, we're all part, living or dead, we're all part of the vast universe. I mean, whether we pass or not, our particles, our molecules are still falling around the universal pattern. So we're all connected and joined anyway. As far as the reincarnate, I just don't know what people have asked me that question as well. I'm going to, if you don't mind, share one possible experience that I had with reincarnation.
Share what you want.
But I don't know. I don't know. So way before I was born, about, I think it was 16 years before I was born, my father's great aunt and her husband had a daughter named Darlene. And she passed away. Now I was born, I think it was like 17 years later I was born. So she had long been passed. And I saw the mom and dad. I knew of them. I knew who they were, but they didn't live around. But, once every 6 years, we'd go visit and we'd stay in the house just to say hello and before they died. What was really weird is that there was always these pictures of these two girls up on the mantelpiece. And one of the girls looked like me, honestly. And I was wondering, well, geez, maybe my mom sent a school picture. I don't know what my mom does, right?
Right.
And in the dress that she's wearing, I had myself convinced, because that was my dress, the blue dress with the white collar with the blue flower. That was my dress. And so finally one day I said to what would be my great aunt, Auntie Anne, I said to her, I said, where'd you get that picture of me? And she looked at me and she says, that's not of you, sweetheart. And I said, yes, it is, because actually I have a twisted tooth in the front. It's a little off. And this girl in this picture did. And she says, that's my daughter that I lost a long time before you were born. Oh. Now I'm gonna jump back just a little bit, just because I always like to come back to this part. So probably the third time we had gone over there over the space of years, I kept telling my mother that, and again, keep in mind our background, our family, we're good with this. So we don't have weird feelings about death and stuff like that. I kept telling my mother that, I keep visualizing myself walking on this dam and there's no water in the dam, but I slipped off of it and I fell. And that the part that was still draining out the dam was pulling me in underneath this bridge. And I can hear this man yelling and then he reaches down, he grabs my arm, but I got sucked further into the tube and I died. Well, my mother I could always see the fright on her face, but I just assumed it was a fright of, my God, my daughter's having a horrible dream, right?
Yeah.
And I kept telling my mother that, and I was wearing that blue dress because it was my favorite. So now fast forward to I'm a little bit older, and my great aunt, is telling me that this girl died, and the girl I never knew about. And I finally told her, I says, you know what? I says, I don't know anything about her. So she started explaining to me. They don't talk about it because it upsets her. The fact that she was walking, her husband worked, and they were draining this lake where there was a dam. And he was working on the bridge. She was walking along the dam. She fell into it, got caught into the suction part where they're draining it, and was pulled underneath the bridge. And the father was laying over the bridge with his legs being held by some other workers, with his hand into the drainage pipe, grabbing a hold of his daughter's hand, and the current they shut the pipe off, but the current was just still, too much. And she drowned. And she looked at me and she said, the dress you see in that picture there, that's the dress she was wearing that day.
Wow.
Now, I did not know anything about this girl. Again, you said you were raised Catholic, and again, I'm 59. And back in the day, parents did not discuss things around kids. It was an open season. You shut your mouth as a kid, and you left the room when you weren't supposed to be in there. And so there was a lot of secrets that kids didn't know. I'd never heard about this girl before, did not know they had another daughter, and it just wasn't discussed. So was I Deanna? How would I have known about this? That dress that she had on, that I kept insisting to my mother that was my favorite dress that I apparently never had. So I don't know. Is that coming back as the same person? No. Same family? Yes. So it's just weird. I cannot.
Yeah, that would creep me out a little bit.
It does, but it doesn't, because I see it this way. If the energy had to go someplace else, why not stay in the same family? I mean, obviously, I don't really remember anything else of that life if I was Deanna. But, it really hasn't affected me. And honestly, it makes me feel kind of good to think that I was able to have what looked like a happy, viable life at one point with these wonderful people. And then I have now had an opportunity to have a very wonderful life with wonderful people. So, it just brings me comfort. Again, am I telling you that I was reincarnated? I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess one wouldn't know, right? I mean,
if we had all the answers of this universe, we really wouldn't need anybody else, right?
Well, there'd be no podcast.
Yeah, there would be no. Everybody would know everything.
That's part of it.
What you said before about healthcare, and I'm going to only because I want to help you feel a little bit better about this. I do a lot of presentations on auras, and of course, auras are our energy field. And anything that's a living, viable being has an aura. So yes, trees do, grass and stuff like that. So it's actually our aura or energy that remains. So if you have an understanding when you're alive of how your aura works, how you can identify things that are going wrong in your body, things that you like, things you don't like, places that make you feel weird, people that make you feel weird, situations that make you feel weird. If you're able to understand what your body's trying to tell you, because it's exactly what the aura does, it triggers our brain to tell us, what feels good, what doesn't feel good, what's harmful. Could you imagine if we all learned this in school, just like we were forced to learn thermal energy, kinetic energy, chemical energy, all those energies? We never learned about biological energy. I'm not talking about neurosynapses. I'm not talking about what the kidneys do, the pancreas does, and I'm not talking about any of that. I'm talking about the essence of life. What makes the DNA work, split? What makes cells divide? The scientists have known this. The first documented study that I've seen where they actually even talked about an aura or an energy form that is the essence of life was in 1760. It's not new. So if in our curriculum at school, if they taught us this right along with that other stuff, our biological energy, how much better off would all of us have been to be able to know how to listen to our body and to listen to what's trying to tell us about people, situation, and places?
I mean, a lot.
Right.
I can tell you that.
How would the pharmaceutical companies be doing, or the insurance companies or healthcare doing? And they wouldn't be doing so hot, would they?
I don't know that pharmaceutical would be as big as it was. Or it is, I'd say. Wouldn't. I mean,
that's why we weren't told.
I got to tell you, I have a guy, I have another group of guys come on there. They're AHA Pure Foods. It's plant-based. It's about, healing the body. There's another guy coming on soon that has, it's all supplements, vitamins, etc. And and one of the people I'd spoken to, they kept expressing how strong the mind is if you could focus on the positives. You could actually heal yourself, right?
Oh, absolutely.
That's what I got to learn more of, because that very imagination I have and that logic, and it's a scary thing when you don't feel good, because I overanalyze. I will have myself diagnosed with 14 different things in 5 minutes. It's crazy.
But that's okay, because it's your brain is, well, first of all, we're programmed to survive, right?
Right.
And we're programmed to make sure that we feel well. So if we're not feeling off, or we're feeling, and we want answers, we want to fix it. And that's actually a part of how we survive. So that's an instinct that you have that you're not going to get rid of. But absolutely, if we understood that our auras, our energy field a lot better, we would be completely different people. And also, it is the people that are around us, the situations that we're in, that actually cause problems in the body. And I love this topic of auras. I think it's something that everybody should learn. I do a lot of presentations on that alone. And again, this is not something that, anybody can't go back and research themselves. It's all very, very well documented. As a matter of fact, I wish I had my notes in front of me right now, because it's a name of a gentleman I can't say. It's I forget what the name is, but anyway, so it was in 1777 or 1778. There was this guy over in Germany, and or over in those provinces there, and he wasn't really a doctor, but he kind of liked to play one on TV. And so what he would do, though, very, very wealthy, he had this knowledge. He wanted to know what happened to the body when it died. He had to know. I mean, from the writings, he was just like a cuckoo. He just had to know.
Yeah, but part of that is that back to that, we want to survive, right?
Right. So he had this, I don't know if it was a fear of death, but he just had to know. So he came up with this idea, and it, kind of creepy. I'm going to tell you, just going to prepare you for it. He had this idea of, I want to see the process of death. So what he would do is he would give money to very, very poor families who had loved ones who were getting ready to die. They hadn't died yet, but they were getting ready to, and in different courses of diseases or trauma or age or whatever. They would take the money because they wanted to eat, right?
Right.
And he would actually take them to his area, his basement was what I remember.
His laboratory under the ground.
Yes. And he would initiate autopsies while they were still alive.
What? Oh my God.
But it's creepy. It is very, very creepy. There's a lot of stuff science has done that if you and I knew all about it, we would really freak out. But let's face it, he is the one, or his literature and his studies, which were brought forward, is what really helped us understand a lot about the slowing down of the metabolism, the slowing down of the brain waves, the slowing down of the pancreatic enzymes, the bloating, the waste production that we produce from our intestines, and what it causes. And he actually started the chain to what we know today of the process of death, which, knowing the process of death, is also how we halt death if there's an opportunity to halt it. So as creepy as he was, unethical, maybe, he really started this whole groundbreaking thing that helped us understand. And he actually was the first one to talk about the pineal gland or pineal gland. Even though he didn't use those terms, that's what he was referencing, is the essence of life in the center of the brain that sees everything and controls everything. And that's the pineal gland. So hence why it's called the third eye.
Well, I mean, someone had to start it, right?
Yeah, somebody had started. So I wish I could say this guy. It's a very weird, 3-name thing. I don't do well with foreign language, but again, he doesn't. People say to me, where do you get all this useless information? I'm like, I read, but I don't just pick up a book and I read. I actually go for journals or medical journals that were chronicled, and I like stuff like that.
I'm the same way, because I want to hear from the source. They're in the moment thoughts, and no better than a journal, right?
Well, yeah, if you read some of these things that people write, like I said, it's just like they're doing like a normal journal, like you and I would. Had a cup of coffee with a friend today, but it was kind of sucky. The coffee was dark, whatever.
Right.
And in this stuff, they write all these wonderful things that they never thought you or I would read, 100 years later and think, wow, that's freaky, because it wasn't freaky to them at the time.
Yeah. I mean, it's the best way to look at it. And as far as researching the afterlife, there's companies right now that are learning to map the brain. They want to reconstruct it for the purpose of uploading and downloading consciousness, essentially trying to be immortal, right? But
yes.
The argument I have with that is you could duplicate it, but that's still not you. That's a duplication, right? It's a digital clone of oneself.
Correct.
Or one day like, I don't know what we're going to have eventually. God only knows. Like our technology is leapfrogging. It's evolving faster than we are. So who knows what direction that goes in as far as post-mortem, right? Because if you say, hey, I have money, I don't want to die. Well, no problem, sir. We're going to upload you to blah, blah, blah server.
Well, technically that's been done. Look at how many people are frozen in a state of cryogenics.
Yeah, that's
for decades now, hoping with money. I don't think you or I could probably do that.
No.
And hoping to someday be reanimated. Will that happen? Don't know.
I'd have to call LG and ask them about a big freezer. I think that's the only thing.
Yeah, this is a great. It's a great thing that you're doing. That people are able to offer their different, opinions on things. Because again, in the end, until we die, none of us know anything. There's speculation. There's theory. There is science to substantiate a lot of it. A lot more than people know.
Yeah,
there is science.
The best part about science is always going to be disproven, because something new comes along and it says what once upon a time was impossible is now very possible.
Correct.
So that's the beauty of science. What I do, I have no position. I don't believe any information is bad information. You got to learn how to filter. And I like getting more information as much as possible. Because at the end of all this, again, I'm going to do a documentary on all these subjects. And, in summary, I'm going to write the book of what makes Adam feel good, right? that's what it's got to come down to. Hopefully he doesn't get buried somewhere and then we die off and some civilization finds it and they think that's the way life is, because it's not. But your perspective, I like.
All these people will read. Like I said, I've written 3 books. I'm on my 4th now because I guess I haven't learned my lesson. But some people will read our chronicles and look at us and have an opinion, one way or the other. I'm hoping people will have an opinion based on what I bring to the table. And again, not saying that I'm a know-it-all. I know everything. I certainly do not. But this is an opinion, something to look at, and this is the facts. This is where I get my information from. But my first book, just to give you and I don't know if I can say this or not, so you should shut me up.
No. You speak your book, speak where they can find them.
Okay. So my first book, You Are Not Alone. Our loved ones are here. You're just not listening. As I said, I'm a registered nurse by trade. I am not an author. I don't really even read books. Not because I don't like them, because, I got glasses that are kind of funky. But anyway, I decided to write that book because I was getting very, very frustrated with, and I'm going to do a little caveat because I don't want to offend anybody. When I was a child in the 70s, I know you probably weren't even born then, but when I was a child in the 70s, they had a lot of the Poltergeists and the Amityville Horror and all these shows that were out on TV.
Right.
And growing up in the home that I grew up in, and again, not able to speak about it as openly as we do today, and I'm grateful for that, I could see that these shows were just depicting absolutely wrong what happens to us when we die, the form we take, what we do, what we're capable of, and all this other stuff. But I couldn't say anything because it was the wrong time.
Right.
So I was like, the first thing I was going to do is in 1978, I decided to form Connecticut Ghost Hunters. It was not originally called Connecticut Ghost Hunters in 1978, but that is what it grew into be. And I needed an outlet to be able to go and speak to people to try to get them just to see that there was a different way. They can have their shows. Don't get me wrong. I love the shows. I'll be watching them for Halloween myself. And I love zombies.
That's the thing, though. Those you're selling appeal. Like, no one buys peace. You know what I mean? It's sad to say that, but no one buys peace. They got to sell that stuff. But go ahead.
Well, so I wanted to have an outlet. So I formed Connecticut Ghost Hunters. And what we would do is we would go into people's homes that said they were having this traumatic, horrible, stuff, getting scratched and objects being thrown at their head. And what I found, and again, part of my learning, my pop told me one thing about it and I knew it couldn't be true, but I wanted to get out there and see for myself. I wanted to spread my wings a little bit and see. So what happens, we would have, they call them case managers now. Mine was just my friend from school. Would always find out from the people what was going on in their house. And what they would first hear, I didn't want to know anything. Was that, let me say, the cabinets all swung open, all the china went smashed all over the floor. The daughter was scratched all the way down the arm by an evil entity, and the living room chairs were stacked on top of themselves in the dining room. Huh. So again, we would go into the home. I would go around the home and I would tell them who was in the home, Grandpa Fred, Aunt Ethel, whatever. And then I would sit down with the homeowners after I'd ask the crew, did you find anything that substantiated their claim? And I would say to them, what brought us here today? And again, I'm just giving you a random, but basically it was the same.
Right.
And they'd always say the same thing to me. Well, the other day we were sitting in the kitchen and the cabinet door opened up really slowly. For a minute, I thought one of the cups were going to fall out. But it did. No, okay. And my daughter thought she felt somebody rub the side of her arm, and I never hear anything about the stacked chairs. So where did we go from the original complaint of all this horror stuff was going on in the house to the fact that no, nothing fell out the cabinet? The cabinet did open. Yes, our loved ones will do that. And they will pull hair and they can knock stuff out the cabinet if they're trying to get your attention. And the daughter didn't get scraped with scratches down her arm by a malevolent spirit. She felt somebody was touching her arm. And yes, they'll do that. So when I was a young age, 17 years old, I started thinking to myself, is everybody running amok and having all these traumatic experiences? But when you sit down and you talk to them rationally, the scenario changes. And if you have a minute, I'll explain to you what I found out.
So that sounds like boredom, right?
Well, no, again, we are programmed because of religion, of society, of cultural,
Right.
We have TV in our face telling us what to believe. And it's only getting worse. We are programmed a certain way. So here, and again, usually I'm visual. Usually I do like Zoom presentations on visual. So just try to come down, memory lane here with me for a second.
Sure.
So let's just say, Adam, you invited me over your house for a lovely cup of coffee. You don't know me, so you're probably crazy for doing so. But we're sitting there having a lovely cup of coffee. Birds are chirping, sun's out. It's awesome. And all of a sudden, for no reason, I pick up my cup of coffee in my hand. I'm holding it up in the air and I throw it. And it goes all over your carpet, all over your puppy, all over everything. Now you're shocked, right?
Right.
So you're thinking, I'm an idiot. There's something wrong with this woman. She's crazy. Go clean it up. And you maybe even call me an expletive, right? But you don't think I'm a negative energy, malevolent spirit, right? Because you can see me.
Right.
I'm just crazy. Okay, so let's just change it up a little bit. Same scenario. However, now you're by yourself. So you're outside. It's a lovely day. You're drinking your coffee. You put your cup clearly down on the table. And all of a sudden you see the cup lift up on its own, up in the air, sits there for a minute, and it goes flying all over the carpet, all over the puppy. What do you do?
I could see panic there, but I'm so real quick. That's most people. I could see oh my God, it's a good. I'm one of those weirdos, by the way. I walk to problems. I don't know why I do that. I've never witnessed anything ever, but there's been times where I was in a dark house and I'll hear something odd and my instinct is get up and go look. No fear, no. So for me, it's different, but I could see how someone else that would happen, they'd freak out, where I would try to talk. Like I swear to you, the one time I thought something was around, I was like, look, just talk to me. I have a lot of questions. And then nothing happened. And what made me think is like, holy shit, they just don't want to hear me talk. Like, it's terrible. Like, am I not good enough? Or, you know what I mean? It's like, it's weird. So
now the problem is, Adam, is nobody taught you to know what they sound like, what they feel like, what they smell like. It's not what you think. It's what we think we see on TV. That's what's telling us what it's like.
Right.
It's completely. So how would you know if they're answering your question if you were never taught how to really recognize what it is they're saying?
It's a good question. I don't.
It is a good question.
How would average people, me more, I'm not, sorry, everyone listening, I'm selfish. How me more can I hear? I want to hear. Like, what would I do to learn?
All right. Well, first of all, you have to change the brain. And unfortunately, all the biases and everything, you have to come to the realization that, in fact, that for whatever reason, we still exist. Whatever rationale you want to use for that, we still exist.
Right.
Every time you have a doubt in your mind, you're actually interfering with that temporal lobe and the frontal lobe in your brain. That's the way the brain works. When there's doubt, it forms exclusions and it rules out things before you even get an opportunity to see the whole picture.
Huh.
Then what you do is you actually learn what it is, and you start small, Adam. Start small, please.
Right.
The easiest thing to do is connect to them through scent first. It is scent first, then it's touch, then it's hearing, then it's seeing. And again, that's because of how the brain works in the different areas of the brain that perceive things. So it actually makes sense.
You're describing confidence too, by the way, right? When you want to do well, like I shoot pool, when you want to play a good match, you can't explore that with doubt. You have to go full in confident.
Oh, absolutely. And again, our brain is our worst critic, unfortunately, and it'll make or break us. And we got to get rid of that preconceived. And I think you'll do well because you want to. You're open. You understand. You're ready to hear some good information.
Yeah.
So then what you do is you got to realize what they smell like and how our body works to smell. So again, people who are smarter than me, scientists way smarter than me, did these tests for many, many years. I'm sure you've heard of it. They did a different cognitive assessments. And what they do is they show people that our nose does not smell. Our nose does not smell. You can put a blindfold on somebody and put a bunch of items in front of their nose that they just told you, oh, yes, absolutely, I'd be able to identify that without seeing it. Stick these items under their nose, and they would not be able to identify it. So that's what we do in our workshops. We blindfold people, and they tell us, and this is what they usually say, oh, absolutely, I'd smell chocolate, especially if they're a woman. Absolutely a cigarette, coffee, an apple, an orange, a lime, dirt, whatever.
Right.
And then we take these items and we put them under their nose, and they get it wrong every single time. And then we take the blindfold off, and they're mad because they said that we tricked them. But once they see it, once they take the blindfold off and see the item, and you put the visual with the nose, okay, then they can smell that item. And that's the whole reason we do this, is to make people understand. In the beginning, you will not see your loved ones. It's the last thing your brain's going to be able to do. So you have to recreate that whole image. So you have to learn how to use your nose, know your nose can be tricked, and that what you think you're smelling may not actually be what you're smelling. And I tell you what, when we started that basis of just the nose, and people had that little practice test and they realized, no, I really can't smell or identify things I thought I could. It's a life changer, and that trains the brain. It's not hard. Everybody can, how I spent, oh my God, 59 years. So let's say 39 years, Adam,
right,
at least teaching people how to use their senses correctly to connect their loved ones. And honestly, my assistant keeps track of all this stuff. I don't, because I'm not a numbers person, but she insists that I have a 91% success rate. I don't know if that's true. She's the number person. I'm sorry.
It makes sense, because there's a perfume you could smell, or I could smell, and the minute I smell it, the image of one of my ex-girlfriends right in the head immediately. So that makes sense. As far as smelling what you're talking about, it's learning how to smell that. I'm going to have to do the courses, right? Because I still got to learn how to identify that.
Okay, so let's just say, first of all, just so you know, there's something. So and again, I don't know how much time you got here, but I'm going to give you a little, if you don't mind.
I don't have a producer over my shoulder, you know what I mean? So,
and this is what I spend my life doing. It's just educating 24/7, and this is what I enjoy doing, because the more people I can help, I'm thrilled with. Anyway, so let's just say I do this little analogy when I do my presentations and my Zooms. So I'm washing the dishes. I don't wash dishes, but I see it on TV. And all of a sudden, the smell of mom's genitae comes in front of your nose. This is what we all do when we think something like that has happened. It smells like mom. I really miss her. I always loved when she wore that perfume.
Huh.
Oh, well. And we go right back to the dishes. And hopefully your listeners, yourself, you won't do that tonight. But there's two very important things that you have to do. Number one, you have to be, I'm sorry, and I say this and women get offended, you have to be a male. You have to be rational. I mean, men sometimes are too rational to get out of their own way. Everything fits in a box and everything has an explanation. But women, on the other hand, every time they hear a bang on the wall, they're like, it's a ghost. So I need the women to come like a little bit this way, the men to get out of the box and meet in the middle. But you have to be rational, because, again, we already know the nose doesn't work correctly. So you look around. What is creating that scent? Is it the dishwashing liquid? Is it the Glade plug-in freshener? Is my deodorant, my lotion, my hairspray? The window's open. Is it coming in from outside? Once you've done that, if you cannot find where that scent came from, stop. It takes a second. Mom, because you knew mom wore that perfume. Mom, I just smell your genitae. Was that you? If that's you, I need you to get as close to me as you can, and I need to smell it again. Boom, in your face. Oh, thank you, Mom. And again, when you thank them, they don't care. They don't care one way or the other, but it's cementing in that weird brain of yours that we have to convince, right?
Right.
So, positive thinking. Thank you, Mom, so much. I really do you see what your granddaughter's doing to me? She's driving me crazy. I need to talk to you, Mom. Please come close to me again. Boom. There's the smell. 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, 6 times, 7 times. I don't care if you do it all the live long day. Okay. If you have done the rational thing first, look for the cause, and you can't find the rational cause, and then they have recreated multiple times for you on command what you've asked them to do, you better stop washing them dishes, go sit in the chair and start talking to Mom.
Huh.
So you do this with everything. And as far as how they smell, the difference between environmental is they are like right there in the moment. So it's like they took a bottle of perfume and sprayed it right in your face. It doesn't waft in, it gets stronger and stronger. No, it's baked bread baking right now under your nose. A cigarette right this second being lit right under your nose. If it's anything vague or seeming like it's building or wavering, that's environmental. That's not them.
Right. So at said point, you could when you develop those senses, you can, I guess a conversation with them would be more along the lines of, what you perceive, right? Because if you're asked, now you know to a certainty, my love, mom's here.
Yeah.
And I'm like, Mom, how are things going on? Would it be like a conversation like that or no?
Well, again, you're going to start with your scent. So what I see what you're saying.
So you get eventually you get to a point where almost it's an understanding.
Yes. And what I tell people to do is once you've gotten the scent good, and which you will, scent is very, very easy. Energy to energy is easy. Their energy, we're energy. It works really well. So once you get the scent down, you can start asking them like yes and no questions that they can do with their scent. But I always tell people then go on to touch next because that's more important. But again, understand the brain can be tricked, which is called matrixing. Understand that you need to know what does they feel like. They don't feel like a hand because guess what? They don't have hands anymore. So when we do our workshops, we take very, very thin washcloths. Like I don't know where you're at, but like J.C. Penney plush for like a dollar store,
right?
Washcloth. It's not as weighted, but it takes up more space, and the longer it sits there, it settles, and that's the feeling that when they're placing their energy on you. So we practice that again, blindfolded, because you're not going to see them take their energy and place it on you in the beginning. So then once you get to the point where you can, let's just say you feel them because now you've gone through the course or you've practiced it with the washcloth or the balloon because that's a different feeling. And you're watching TV and all of a sudden you feel that sensation on your arm. The brain learns by repetition and the brain retains by repetition. So if you practice this enough and you're watching Lawrence Welk, because I'm old, on TV and you feel that washcloth effect, you have to do the same thing I talked about before. You have to validate first. Is that my hair? Did the fan just turn on? Did my shirt just brush up against my arm? Blah, blah, blah. You got to do all that. Then if not, you say, Mom, are you trying to get my attention? Mom, did you just touch my left arm right here? Do me a favor. If that was you, touch me again right here. Switch it up. Mom, thank you. I appreciate it. Mom, can you touch my right cheek right here? And then you feel it on your cheek. Do it a dozen times. That's when you can start getting more communication going with them. We're asking them questions where they can actually tap for you. And I've told people to do it. It's done. They've done it. Mom, can you tell me if you're with cousin Jamie also and see what's going on with her? Tap my arm twice for no. And you get 2 taps.
Right. I'll do it. I think the problem I've always had is I was very, I don't know, I'm like a bull in a china shop. I'm like, what, are you here? What's up?
Well, but those are things that you're not going to get responses for because even if they are responding to you, which they would be, you wouldn't be able to recognize it yet. You really have to put the time in. Unfortunately, society and decades of misinformation has put us in this bad situation that we shouldn't be in. But Adam, I'm telling you, you are so open-minded, you are going to be fine. But you're asking for them to tell you things that you're not ready to hear yet because you don't know what they sound like. Right. It's not like a voice like you and me speaking. So how would you be able to identify something properly if you don't know what you're listening for?
And you have these shops on Zoom, you do, right?
I do them on Zoom. I do them privately. Unfortunately, with COVID, I can't do, yet the outside thing, but I do them all the time. And again, it's probably good. So my first book, You Are Not Alone, talks all about our loved ones being here, why they're here, what they can do, what they're all about, how they're helping us, things to watch out for.
And that can be found on Amazon?
It's on Amazon. Okay. It's on Barnes & Noble. It's on Nook. It's in audio. And for those people who might be listening, who prefer audiobooks, I actually paid somebody else to put the voice on there because nobody wants to listen to this annoying mess for too long.
You listen. I will post all those in the comment or in the description, by the way. So I'll have you get it. Yeah, I'll get.
And if they're really, if they want to save a little bit of money, a lot of libraries have it. But if you go through my email, Sydney Sherman author @yahoo.com, you can get it from me directly. It is much cheaper. It's like half the price of what you're going to pay for it on. Don't ask me why Amazon does that or Barnes and Noble.
Because they're billionaires.
And I would also sign it.
They're billionaires. So they want more money.
Yeah, exactly. So, and to tell you what, that book, and I got to say, hopefully you appreciate because you're going to write a book yourself, Adam, and you're going to do very well at it. I didn't have the money to do, a publisher. They'll take all this money and stuff. And it's ridiculous. So I did it right here in my own home and I created the book. And my first book has been bought, read, and sold on every continent except Antarctica. I don't even think people live there. It is a bestseller for self-published authors, and it has sold over 10,000 copies, which is very good for a non-published, nobody knows me person, right?
Right.
And I think the reason why it's done so very well, because again, my assistant decided to do some research into all this for me because I'm not really interested. And what most people said when she did the survey that answered it was, number one, it makes sense. What's in the book makes sense to what it is that they have experienced themselves. It makes sense to what relates more scientifically to research that they've done. And they understand the stuff on TV is for entertainment purposes. And they like the fact that it's like I'm talking to you now.
Right.
It's not a lot of hard, big words. It's just something that's very easy to understand. So it's done very, very well. So anyway, so anybody who's interested, they can do that. My last book I'm writing now is on auras. I wasn't going to, but auras is a subject that people really need to know about. And I don't like I call buffet auras. So you can buy a book and you're going to get a little bit of this on this book. You buy this book, you get a little bit of over here. No, there needs to be one book that has all the information from A to Z about auras. And unfortunately, I haven't found one yet. So whether I want to or not, I'm writing another one.
Well, you need to. Yeah, if you're not finding a book like that, it's got to exist, right? Because I'm one of those. I hate watching shows or reading anything, and I don't have next time, or it's not here, or maybe I need to know. I don't have that kind of patience, so.
And that's what I found when I was researching, because everybody was coming to me. I don't want to write another book. I really, really don't. And people are like, oh, what can you recommend an aura book? So I did a whole bunch of research because, you know what? I don't know, it would benefit me if I found the books to get people off my back, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And I was like, what is wrong with this stuff? Is not vague. It's very well educated, it's scientifically documented. It's not up for discussion. It is what it is. And so why is somebody having such a hard time writing a book with all the components in it that everybody needs? So here I go.
Well, that's you, Sydney. And I look forward to that. I mean, look, everything I've done as far as this podcast and all the research, I went to the University of YouTube. You know what I mean? So
right.
That's where I learned everything. I learned a lot. And again, even in YouTube, there's some bad information or some good. You just got to learn how to filter. It's a lot of work, but you got to filter correctly. Well, Sydney,
we all read things in society, depending on whatever subject you want.
Yeah.
You can read about it, and you just have to have an open mind. And then what you do, even with my stuff, and I tell people at the end of every one of my presentations that I have, and like the rest of this week, I am on the rest of this week, I have something every night this week. And what I tell people all the time is, don't even trust me. Listen to what I'm saying. I give you the links. I give you the places where you can find where I've got my information from, but go do your own research.
Yeah,
because
always.
If you can see it for yourself and convince yourself, isn't that more powerful than anything?
Yeah, I agree. Look, there's a lot you can learn. I like documentaries, but I'm not going to learn definitive facts from it. Like an example would be, I just watched a documentary on how the earth was made. And by the end of it, rather than me being satisfied, I was like, how the hell do they know that?
Yeah, right.
There's no way they know this. So I think what you're watching is a lot of theory, which is cool. I'm cool with that. But at least say it's theory. Don't speak it to science fact. You know what I mean? I agree with you when you say that.
There's and like I said, there's a lot of stuff that I still don't know. And I'm not afraid of death. And people always, say to me, well, especially like when I used to give readings years ago, which my grandfather warned me about, and he was so right. But anyway, people don't really, it's not that they don't appreciate it. They can do it themselves. And I'm a violet aura. And someday, if you ever find out about violet auras, we're kind of like go along the same with blues. We're very giving people. We want to help. Everything is truly done with the heart. We're very empathetic. Our goal is to just have a nice, happy life and live in harmony with the birds, flowers, trees. The problem with the blue, where blues differ from violet because they're in the same family, is I will only put up with so much. And after a while, people annoy me and I don't like lazy. Violets do not like lazy.
Right.
And so I can give them all the information in the world about grandma who's with them. And I'm not talking about information like, oh, grandma says she misses you, because that's just a bunch of baloney.
Right.
But like grandma said that the turkey platter she used every year for Thanksgiving is in a box shoved under your bed. Now, unless, Adam, everybody in the world has grandma's turkey platter she used every year for Thanksgiving shoved in a box under the bed, and it's not stuff you'd find on Facebook or any of those other places that you can research. That's pretty like spot on. So I would give people all this accurate information. There's no way for validation so they knew, in fact, grandma was with them. Then I would teach them basically what I just did with you, but I'd go over all the senses and I'd let them feel or smell their loved one while they were in my presence. My intention was to send them home with everything they needed to get started, and they were well on their way. And what they would do, which really upset me, is they take everything that I had to offer and everything. But then they'd say, and Sydney, when can I come back again and get a date on your calendar? No, stop being lazy. You have the information. I've given you everything. So I stopped giving readings 6 years ago, and I'm not going back, and I'm not doing it because what I found out is honestly, I wasn't helping people. I was aiding and abetting them.
Right. Yeah. I can't, so an example for me is like, if I went to you and you taught me, my goal is to learn, because I don't want to have to go to another. It's like inconvenient to have to go someone all the time. I would rather learn, so I could just do it.
But see, I guarantee something tells me you're probably a Violet too, Adam. But again, I can't really tell just by talking, but only because some of the comments that you've made. Violets are very rational people. They see things as, oh, okay, I have this opportunity, then I'm going to take that opportunity because I can see how I can use that to help me.
Yeah.
Whereas, say, a brown or a gray or an orange aura, they're just going to kind of like they're floaters. They'll learn, they'll listen, but it really just still wants somebody to give them all the answers. And I have no patience for that.
Yeah, you can't. Like for me, like when I was building the website, some time ago, I read, I guess it was like $1,500 to pay someone to do it perfectly. I just went on the University of YouTube, did it by myself. Took a little longer, but I did it, and I learned it. And I retained the information. And I could help other people. Right? You got to want to know. There's a difference. It's like you're either absorbing the information to absorb for that moment, or you want to know it so it could benefit you, and that's the difference.
Right. And that's why, I guess it makes the world go round. It's why there's certain people. And again, the different aura colors. If we were all the same people, it wouldn't be really quite fun now, would it?
I'm interested in doing one of your courses. I'm going to have to learn.
Well, again, if you, like I said, I wish I had my calendar in front of me. All this week, I'm doing presentations either on my book, You Are Not Alone, or on auras, or on understanding your senses. And I pretty much give all the information. I feel bad for people. They can't come to Zooms or a lot of Zooms or presentations. So when I do my presentations, I'm pretty much spilling everything out on the table. So anybody can go on my website, SydneyShermanAuthor.com, and see where I am. I'm, like I said, very, very busy. And it's not just because of October. I'm booked constantly.
Yeah,
I'm very grateful.
You got my info. Just let me know when you're ready. I have all the time. I have plenty of time. I'm not rushing anything. So you got, whenever you have openings, I'll learn. You'll see, I like to learn. Sydney,
okay. Adam, do you have a podcast? Do you have a podcast tomorrow night?
I do, actually. I am, believe it or not, maybe it's October, but I'm booked constantly.
So I tell you what, I'm going to give you some, well, actually just go on my website. You'll see the next time I have any one of my presentations that interest you.
Yep.
And the presentations, the Zooms that I do at nighttime, those are free, so it's easy. Join one, sit in on it, and see how you do, and then we can always talk after that.
Yeah, for sure. All right, Sydney, before we close, one last thing I'll ask you. Have you had a negative encounter ever?
Never. With the living. I'm telling you, I have never had a negative encounter. And very quickly, I have a second cousin who was, something was wrong with him. He was not right in the head. He would be the type that would hurt animals and just very sadistic. And you just knew that there's something, he was a bad seed, if you want to use that.
Right. And
when he died, he went along with everybody else. He was right along the side of us with all the other loved ones. So I'm honestly, if he was the person you'd think would go to hell for everything that he did, but he wasn't. And he didn't do anything like that in his energy form. That was a physical problem he had when he was alive. Some kind of physical malady or whatever else.
Well, made in your physical form, I think chemicals play a big role rather than your energy form, right?
Right. Oh, absolutely. So again, I didn't need to see that because I already knew that, but to talk from personal experience in my own family, he's not screaming from the fiery pits of hell.
Right.
And he's not ostracized. He literally is in his energy form, standing right next to my lovely grandmother and everybody else. So in the living, yes, unfortunately, daily, I see negative stuff.
It's a shame.
Absolutely not.
The human race is very, again, I say this a lot too. We're still racist. I don't even know how that's still possible. It's like we have more reasons to divide than we do to come together. It's an unfortunate thing.
It's very unfortunate, and hopefully, we'll resolve it someday. But the nature of people, I'm not sure. I don't know how much hope I have for that, Adam.
Well, one could only hope.
Yeah.
Sydney Sherman, I enjoyed having you on.
Oh, this was great. Thank you so much for thinking of me and offering to do this. And I'm sure we will talk again soon.
Fantastic, Sydney. Thank you again for being on. I'll talk to you soon.
Have a good night.